All right, good afternoon. The time is 5:07 on March 6th, 2024, and this meeting of the DC State Board of Education working session is now called to order. This month's working session will be held in person at the Marion Asbury Building, Marion Asbury Junior Building, excuse me. However, in-person attendance is limited to State Board members, staff, and guests. The session will also be streamed live on the State Board's YouTube page for members of the public to attend. Please visit sboe.dc.gov to learn how to submit and or present testimony at a State Board meeting. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum by.
I'm ready. I'm online. Y'all ready to go?
All right, Executive Director Butler, thank you for being with us, and please call the roll.
Representative Williams. Representative Chang.
Present.
Representative Goulet. Representative O'Leary.
It doesn't come right.
Yeah. Here.
Oh, okay. I was like, I'm not gonna have one going down the list like this. Representative Henderson. Representative Best.
Here. Present.
Representative Reed.
Present.
Vice President Patterson.
Present, and also Henderson is here, ma'am.
Yes.
Here.
President Thompson.
Present.
Representative Kelly. Representative Villaflor.
Present.
Representative Yarkin. Representative Washington.
Present.
Present.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Quorum has been determined, and State Board will now proceed with the meeting. Again, welcome to our March working session. We do not have a fuller leadership report because we've not met with any agencies. So there's nothing that there was to share via those notes. You do all know, however, that we are in performance oversight season. The full performance oversight testimony not only was shared with the board, but it was also shared before council last week. So thank you to members who gave feedback on the testimony. Thank you also to Executive Director Butler and the staff for putting together the bulk of that testimony, in addition to our current interim ombudsman, in addition to Dan Davis, our chief student advocate, for testifying and representing the State Board as a agency. Do members have any questions about the local board? All right, hearing none, I am pleased to turn to Executive Director Butler for the wonderful updates from the agency, which I'm looking forward to her sharing.
Thank you, President Thompson. Good evening, members of the DC State Board of Education. As you just heard, the agency completed its performance oversight hearing last week, and we are currently preparing our budget oversight testimony, which is scheduled for April 5th.
Executive Director Butler, you're going in and out. I don't know if your Wi-Fi is stable, but if it's not, maybe you can turn off your camera to help with it. We're hearing every other word.
Got it.
For what it's worth, Director Butler, I can hear everything you're saying quite clearly, so I would propose that it's something in the room.
I understand. So maybe I just got the same message from Jen too, that she can hear very clearly. So it may be a sound issue in the room. But I will try again, and I will also, I don't mind turning off my camera if that will make it easier for folks. We'll try all the things. Okay. The agency completed its performance oversight hearing
No.
last week. And we are currently preparing for the budget oversight testimony on April 5th. The state board has hired a temp to assist us with our communications work. Please join me in welcoming Jessica to our team, and she will be with us for the next 10 weeks.
Executive Director Butler, I'm having Hannah, pull the written report. And if it's okay, I'll have Hannah read it, so that the members can hear and be able to ask questions. Cause I do want them to get a hearing. We're still not hearing you clearly, and I apologize for the technical difficulties.
No problem. I can just send it to everyone via email. I'm sitting right here at my computer.
Thank you. And then happy to turn it over now. And then we can read the report later. So we'll just change around the agenda a bit. If it is okay, I'm actually gonna go ahead and tee up Oxy since they are in the room and I know we can hear them. And we can make sure that members get the full agency report out following the Oxy presentation. So for the next 45 minutes, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Assistant Superintendent Elizabeth Ross, Megan Dumont, Marcus Hughes, and Andrew Gall from the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, who will share updates on the financial literacy and social emotional learning standards. I want to thank the OSCE team for being here today. And look forward to a thorough discussion and update on both sets of education standards. The state board is excited to work alongside you all to enrich and review our first ever financial literacy standards. So, OSCE, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. It's always great to be here and to be hosted by the state board, and really appreciate your time and attention. We have a couple of objectives today. First, we will be discussing financial literacy, where we will introduce the final changes that we have made based upon feedback from the board, and answer many questions, and also have a resolution of approval for you all to review and provide any feedback on. And then we will introduce the SEL standards, the social emotional learning standards, and go over sort of the process, where we are at the process. I understand that the state board may have already drafted some feedback, I believe, and we look forward to receiving that, as well as answering any questions you have about the standards. So again, appreciate opportunity to talk about both these great sets of standards, which will both be firsts for the District of Columbia, and we'll turn it over to our great GM learning.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Megan, take it away.
Yes, thank you so much. It's great to see you all again. Happy March and our first week of March. I'm happy to get started talking about financial literacy standards. We could have the next slide. And the next one. I'm Megan Dumont. I'm the Special Assistant for Teaching and Learning at OSCE. I'm going to review some background information and our standards development process. This should all look very familiar to you all. It's very similar to what I presented last month. Please. So we have been working on this process since last June, and we are so excited to be coming to a conclusion of our timeline for putting together the financial literacy standards. As you all know, we started by establishing a working group at OSCE. We worked with some national experts to put together a draft set of standards. We've received a lot of stakeholder engagement feedback and public comment feedback. We brought the revised standards to you all last month, and we are here today with a final set of standards for your review. Next slide, please. In this slide, we're just going into a bit more detail about the work that we did in the development process of the standards. So as I said, we started with developing our working group. Over the summer, we did some extensive stakeholder engagement, which included a survey where we received over 75 responses. We conducted some focus groups, including some student focus groups at schools, such as going to the NAP Academy at KIPP. And then we used that insight that we received from DC students and community members to create a draft set of standards built on the national standards for financial literacy that were developed by Jumpstart and the National Council for Economic Education. We then had that draft reviewed by a set of national and local experts that we had put together and who had provided some consultative feedback to us in the development and drafting process. And then the biggest chunk of our work most recently was our public comment, which was open from November through January, where we solicited and received feedback from members of the DC community, including educators, school leaders, community-based organizations, as well as, again, students. That included our Superintendent Advisory Council and coming to the State Board of Education Student Advisory Council, which we received wonderful feedback. And we reviewed all of the comments that we received in order to develop a revised and final set of proposed standards. So, and then also I do want to mention that we sent a letter on February 21st responding to the wonderful feedback and questions that you all sent to us. And thank you for that opportunity to receive and respond to your feedback. Next slide, please. So going again through the proposed standards. So we went over some of this in February, but just want to highlight again the major revisions that we made based on the feedback we received from public comment. So we included, and from actually the feedback you all gave us as well. So we added an introduction to the standards to provide some more context of what they are and how we envision them potentially being implemented in a elective course in high school. We reorganized the document. So we had started with 6 sections. We ended up combining saving and investing sections to streamline concepts, because some of the feedback we received is there was some repetition. We also reorganized within each content section to have a table for knowledge and for skills to help educators better understand what they would be teaching and for these financial concepts. We also added outcomes to make the learning more actionable. And again, streamlining, I've said that a couple of times, that was the main piece of feedback we received. From that, we ended up removing 22 standards and we added 6 standards, 6 full standards from public comment. Next slide, please. And then finally, we wanted to highlight some additional changes that we've made since we were last here. So from State Board of Education, we heard about the need to add more reflecting the Green New Deal and environmental concepts. So we've added a new outcome to our standard from spending skills about purchasing or leasing a vehicle. We added an outcome about comparing different options, including electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and gas vehicles. Slide, please. And then we also have brought to you all the proposed literacy, financial literacy standards approval resolution. So you all should have received the full resolution prior to this meeting, but just as an overview, it's included here. The resolution essentially summarizes our process of developing these standards and asks for your approval. So this is part 1, just kind of giving background. And then part 2, this concludes the process and the resolution for adoption. So next slide, please. Our next step would be to we anticipate a vote from you all in your March 2024 public meeting, and then we would once the standards are finalized, they would be implemented across DC in school year 2024-2025. Please, that concludes action. And so are we going to do questions?
And then we'll have an immediate questions about the financial literacy or civil literacy.
I have something to about after it's all done. Then what?
After,
Now we've got a tight deadline. Training,
yeah.
curriculum,
Mhm.
and recruitment. Can you tell me a little bit about those 3?
So our first step in implementation would be leveraging the tools that we have to ensure really robust professional learning for our educators. So we would explore, our Aussie teaching and learning team would explore available options for professional learning that may already exist. and leverage our learning management system to ensure that all educators across the district have access to great professional learning about these concepts. And then we would move from there. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, and I'll just layer on top that one of the key questions that we're hearing from LEA leaders, from educators, and from students as we begin to move forward with standards implementation. As you know, thanks to our great work with the state board, we've done a lot of excellent standards work over in recent years, and now as we move towards implementation, LEAs are thinking strategically about how to support that implementation. And so one of the documents that we talked about with this body last month was the how the social studies standards reinforce and support, particularly at earlier grades, what we're doing in the financial literacy space. And we are doing that work across our academic content standards. So thinking through how we can make sure that our students have the math skills that they need in teacher side of the house, and OSSI is very well positioned to collect and report data about our teacher workforce to make sure that we have the systems and processes in place to support and sustain a strong teacher workforce. But we really do defer to our LEAs to do improvement in selection and hiring of teachers. At the same time, we are really excited to be launching financial literacy standards in a jurisdiction where we have pockets of excellence that are underway. And it's no mistake that Megan is leading this work on our team, because among her portfolio is elevating excellence. And so what that looks like at an individual educator perspective, what that looks like at a school level perspective. And with the financial literacy standards in particular, because they support what is currently an elective course for high schools, we are excited to be working with not just a coalition of the willing, but a coalition of the excited. So where we have LEAs like ACAP at the National Academy of Finance that have made an investment in this work, we have prioritized working with them on these financial literacy standards to make sure that they will meet their needs and then be able to be implemented with fidelity.
I'm thinking of it since it's a brand new course, and we have all these universities in the area who have business departments and math departments and things like that, which you need. But does anybody know? This has to be publicized, and it has to be. The community needs to know that it's out there. I mean, I know when we vote on it in March, but March is only like 4 months away from August.
Yep.
And seems to me as a veteran educator, that when I first started teaching, I wasn't a veteran educator. And so I was learning every day about how to be a teacher. But this seems like a perfect place for someone who hasn't ever taught before, who's just coming out of college with knowledge of all of this, would be a tremendous candidate for that. But they need to know about it.
Yeah, I really appreciate the reference to our university partners. As this body knows, one of the groups of individuals that we really benefited from in the standards development process were individuals leading this work at universities, in part because they are working with students in many cases just out of high school, and they're working with undergraduates and are aware of first, the level of financial knowledge and skills that those high school students have, and then the level of financial knowledge and skills that those high school students need. And as part of with what Megan shared, always we are trying to make sure that we are building out both the asynchronous and synchronous coursework available on our learning management system, so that any educator from brand new to very seasoned can access that coursework and build and develop their skills. And I do think it is worth us talking to some of those experts. Particularly, we worked with some individuals at American University who are running a tax clinic, who provided us with significant technical assistance and advice to strengthen our tax standards, and were really helpful, and I think would be excited to work with us in this space. So I think you're talking about a slightly different population, which is those fresh recent graduates. There's also a lot of work that we are doing to support our educator preparation programs here in DC and making sure that they're graduating candidates are future teachers with the knowledge and skills that they need. And in some of the earliest work actually that I did with a slightly different composition of this board, but Representative O'Leary, you were there for this as well, was on those new educator preparation standards to help ensure that those programs are preparing candidates. So certainly as part of our elevation of this work following the March vote, we would share these standards and the final resolution and the final determination with all of our stakeholders via our various channels. And that includes regular meetings with our ed prep partners. It includes regular meetings with our LEA partners. It includes our social media channels. We have regular bulletins and communications that go out to make sure that these individuals have access to the work that is underway. And one of the benefits of engaging in this very collaborative public process with this body is that it helps ensure that there is wide knowledge across the system that this work is underway. And so we have been socializing this work with our educational community here in DC since last June. So although we anticipate adoption later this month, and that is only a few months out from the start of the school year, we are also in a position where we are building on a lot of knowledge and skills that are already existing in the space. And we're lucky to be able to do that. Frankly, not every jurisdiction can, but we're in a relatively privileged position where we have lots of great opportunities that we can continue to elevate and highlight. So it's absolutely the right question. I mean, the strongest set of standards is not going to make a difference for kids if they are not well implemented. And I really, really appreciate you raising it. We are confident that even given the relatively short time frame that we're talking about, just shy of half a year between March and between the start of the school year, that we can be well prepared to support our LEAs with elective financial literacy courses in meeting and exceeding these standards.
Thank you.
The other members have questions. Representative Washington.
I just have a quick question. You said that 22 standards were removed. Do you know which, off the top of your head, standards were removed? And then I also had a question about the topics. Oh, I had a question about some of the topics, because it says clearly pointed to too many standards and they need to prioritize certain topics. Are those topics the 5 sections, or are they simply most like embedded?
Yes, so most of the 22 standards that were removed had more to do with like economic standards. And so when we came in February and we shared with you all a document that sort of shows that a lot of those topics were already covered in our social studies standards. And so in order to help streamline these standards and keep them focused on the financial topics that folks thought were most, which as you mentioned are the content areas, so spending, saving, investing, risk management, those were really highlighted. Folks also wanted things that were more applicable, and some of the 22 standards that were removed were more theoretical in nature. And so that is why we made that shift. The 6 that were added were really more about like application based. So as Elizabeth just mentioned, some experts from American University reached out to us about taxes. And so we added some additional information there about taxes based on that feedback. And so that's part of the 6 that were added. And then you said you had a second question.
Oh, those are the 2.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Williams, Representative Henderson.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question more around like implementation of like the general status quo of financial literacy learning in DC. Do we have a sense, and I don't know, or expect you to have this off the top of your head, but like what percentage of schools offer a financial literacy course currently?
We do not have that information right now, but it is part of the work that we're doing with our course collection data. We will have some more of the sunshine into that soon. Throughout our stakeholder engagement and public comment process, we did come into contact with several LEAs that are already implementing financial literacy standards or coursework of, not standards, but I should say coursework of some kind. So we know that it does exist throughout our system, but an exact number off the top of my head.
Thanks. Yeah, my only other question right now is, does like OSSI have an expectation or like a hope for what percentage of like high schools should offer financial literacy coursework? You know, like, are we just gonna let, you know, whether it be in DCBS or in the charter sector?
I'm happy to tackle this one. So I think what I would love to invite you to do is to raise this question again when we talk about the work that we're doing to redesign high school graduation under our strategic plan. Priority 4 is around reimagining high school. And through those conversations, we're getting great feedback from stakeholders across the ed sector. And I really working to do a lot of work to better understand across the country what states are thinking about when it comes to high school graduation requirements, what students should know and be able to do, and how those requirements and opportunities and options should hang together. And so consistent with what Megan just shared, the work that we're doing under our course data collection is helping us answer question 1, and the work that we're doing under our high school redesign is helping us answer question 2. But great questions all the way around. Thank you.
First, thank you for incorporating the climate related standards. I'm also wondering, I know this has been an interest of various council members over the years. I'm just wondering if you have engaged with them, if you think this will satisfy them, or if they were after something else, and maybe that relates to this question about graduation as well. I don't know if they wanted this to be mandated or what, but just wondering if you've had that engagement.
Thanks so much. Oh, please.
Our experience with council is that they are not trying to dictate individual levels of standard, that they don't have that expertise that ASI the state board bring in. So that is not the level of engagement that we would work with them on. But I think to the second point, yes, that is a continuing conversation around when we're reimagining graduation requirements. And so that conversation will continue as we.
And I will just layer on top, we have had some clear feedback from council members with an interest in this space, that they were very interested in us developing separate and distinct financial literacy standards from the work that we were doing under our social studies standards. As this group knows better than most, we're very intentional about including economic concepts in our social studies standards, and had conversations with council about whether that was what they were seeking. And we got feedback that it was truly a separate set of distinct financial literacy standards that they were interested in. And so we are very pleased that we were able to develop this set of standards.
Further questions from members? I have a question. I know this is this set of standards that is for high school students. As we are nearing the end of standards development for high school, do you have anything you would like to, like, how much can you share, or what are you thinking as far as like the pre-high school standards? I know that Jumpstart does have standards that do go earlier. And so just curious what any horizon might be around just like working down to earlier grades.
Yeah, I love this question because we want to be sure that students show up in high school ready to access these content standards, which means that they do need access to those economic concepts earlier and are getting through social studies and a lot of the math content that they will get through our math content standards. We do know that just as we have high schools already implementing financial literacy standards, we have K-5 and 6, 8, and K-8 schools also already implementing the earlier stages of the financial literacy standards. We're not in a position today to make a commitment around timeline, but it's certainly something that we're excited to explore, particularly as we get feedback from our LEAs in implementing these standards. We're excited to support them in making these standards a success, and we'll be very interested in feedback about whether a longer runway, a longer trajectory, backmapping these standards through earlier grades would be supportive. So I think the shortest, clearest answer on that is we're happy to continue the conversation, but they do really want to give our LEAs a chance to implement these standards and get some feedback from them.
All right, I think we're transitioning to everyone.
Okay, so I'll pass it to my colleague, Mark, too.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcus Hughes. I serve as a school culture and climate specialist at OSSI. I'm also a Ward 6 resident, and it's a privilege to present to you this draft set of DC K to adult social and emotional learning standards. Next slide. And we'll start by this is an overview of our standard development timeline. We've been working on the standards development process since the fall of 2022, where we began by conducting a landscape analysis, which led OSSI to joining the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, known as CASEL, collaborative state initiative. Year 2 began as a continuation of our market research, and by the summer of 2023, OSSI convened stakeholders from all across DC, which resulted in the creation of 2 external stakeholder working groups. By December of 2023, the working group developed a draft set of standards, which were open for public comments on December the 15th. And as of this year, which is year 3, OSSI has facilitated several virtual and in-person public engagement feedback sessions. Stakeholders' feedback was compiled and incorporated into finalizing the draft standards. And OSSI is on track to develop and adopt a comprehensive set of standards by later spring and ready for implementation by DC local education agencies by the 24-25 school year. So, these standards establish expectations for social emotional learning skills of all DC public and charter schools serving K through adult learners. OSSI anticipates that the social and emotional learning standards be implemented across all grade and subjects. While the standards focus on what is most essential, they do not describe all that can or should be taught. And the standards define what all students are expected to know and be able to do rather than how teachers should teach. Next slide, please. Partnered with national SEL experts, OSSI collaborated with the organization EduSolve to provide consultative support throughout the standards development process. And again, OSSI partnered with CASEL by joining the Collaborative State Initiative, or CSI, which is a collaborative between state education agencies to support systemic evidence and research-based SEL practices and policies. And to ensure a local context and expertise, OSSI closely collaborated with the DCPS Becoming Team, representative from DC Charter LEAs, and the DME's office at every stage of the development process and will continue to do so. Next slide, please. Here's a more in-depth look at the stakeholder engagement and standard development. This past summer, OSSI conducted a 2-day scan analysis, which engaged over 61 teachers, directors, deans, principals, and community stakeholders to provide early insights as to what should be included in the DC social and emotional learning standards. As a result of the scan analysis engagement, OSSI formalized 2 external working groups, which were our SEL Advisory Committee and our Writing Committee, to collaborate in the standards development process. In the fall, the Writing Committee worked diligently to develop the first draft set of DC-specific SEL standards using the CASEL framework as a base. And that draft was reviewed by a panel of national experts prior to public release. We are extremely proud to have developed the standards through a collaborative process with stakeholders from a diverse range of educational institutions, agencies, and community organizations throughout the district. During these engagements, we received positive feedback from our stakeholders indicating the overall excitement and anticipation toward the social and emotional learning standards. And this feedback was highly valuable as it highlights a level of interest and support from our stakeholders. The stakeholders involved in this process included parents, teachers, school administrators, mental and behavioral health clinicians, social workers, counselors, directors, and various members of community organizations. As reflected from the list of representatives on the slide, we were very intentional with regard to stakeholder voice and representation. Next slide, please. In response to the public feedback, OSSI will be making the following changes to the draft standards. The feedback themes that will be addressed are the need for alignment and consistency, comprehensive development and integration, documentation, clarity, and cultural considerations. Next slide, please. Implementation challenges and support, and the importance of equity, inclusivity, and real world relevance. As shown by a direct impact comment from one of our esteemed educators, which illustrates the need for a holistic approach to social and emotional learning. It reads, some of these standards are things that could be part of a curriculum like emotions, but others are more a part of the culture of the classroom, school, and community. Next slide, please. Slide. The standard structure begins with the 5 competencies, which are self-awareness, self-management, social and cultural awareness, relationship skills, and decision-making and agency. Each competency is accompanied by a standard, which are descriptions of what students should know and be able to do by the end of the course or grade level, followed by a grade band, which is a combination of 2 or 3 grade levels that work together to provide connected instruction opportunities for students. And lastly, indicators, which are specific skills that describe students' capabilities and understanding. Next slide, please. Here is a visual of the standard structure. If you notice, the competencies are to the top, followed by the supporting standard, grade band with accompanying indicators. Next slide, please. Now here we have a more in-depth look at our competencies, beginning with self-awareness, which is the ability to recognize, understand, expresses one's emotions and how they impact one's actions. Also includes the ability to identify one's personal strengths, interests, values, and challenges, develop positive self-identity, recognize oneself as a lifelong learner, and know when one needs to seek help. Illustrated below the standard are examples of how the indicators are vertically aligned, showing an increase in rigor and mental development capacity as the learners move to higher grade bands. Next slide, please. Here's an in-depth look at competency self-management, which is the ability to manage, express one's emotions, set and achieve personal and academic goals, and persevere through challenges. And again, notice the indicators, vertical alignment with rigor increase across the grade band. Next slide, please. Here is an in-depth look at competency relationship skills, which are the ability to build and maintain positive, respectful, and healthy relationships across environments by listening, communicating, using perspective-taking skills, resolving conflict, and collaborating. And notice, once again, the same vertical alignment with rigor increasing across the grade bands. And I also want to just highlight how this particular competency directly supports conflict resolution skills. Next slide, please. Here's an in-depth look at competency, social, and cultural awareness, which is the ability to empathize with and respect others, including those with different and diverse perspectives, abilities, backgrounds, and cultures. It also includes the ability to understand and use positive social and communication skills. And again, uniformity of the vertical alignment, increasing across the grade bands. And this particular competency supports implicit and explicit biases. Next slide, please. And last, we have an in-depth look at our competency, decision-making, and agency, which is the ability to make individual decisions and take self-directed action. It also includes the ability to recognize and connect how one's decisions impact oneself and community. And once again, like before, the vertical alignment and the rigor increases across the grade bands. Next slide. And next slide. OSCE next up, OSCE will consider any feedback from SBOE and return to SBOE's April working session with updated draft of these standards and proposed resolutions of support. OSCE will develop resources and support to aid DC educators in implementing these new standards in the spring and summer of 2024. And OSCE is on track and anticipate all schools to be ready for implementation of the social and emotional learning standards by the 24-25 school year.
And now we'd be happy to take any questions.
No questions. Representative, sorry. Representative Reed, and then I saw another hand. Representative Best.
Thanks for coming. Quick plug, thank you for the financial literacy piece about the DC resources. I forgot to say, thank you. I love seeing that in the financial statement, so thank you. Okay, social emotional learning. Was really excited to see the number and diversity of stakeholders that you had listed. A kind of, I guess, question that I've been pondering is in these standards, I noticed that you have on slide 23, the equity, inclusivity, real world relevance, and keeping that as a frame. I'm wondering in this document, will you define equity and inclusivity? And I say that because I've been doing some reflection. A lot of times, like, we come at equity for racial equity. I was working with the university and they were like, there's so many other elements of equity. And sometimes just having that framed or defined helps whoever's reading this document know how you define the inclusivity or equity piece. So if whenever the standards or whatever our, what is this thing, the draft or next iterations come available, I would love to see like how you're framing those two words so that when we're reading this document or educators are picking it up, they know exactly what you mean by those two words and not interpreting it in their own frame. It kind of just helps level set, especially as a state. But as a state, like define it for yourself so that when people pick it up, they know exactly what you're trying to get to. So that's my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that comment, Representative Reed. We really appreciate it. And I am happy to share that we mean equity broadly construed, particularly when we're talking about standards. I think it's very, very important to mean equity across multiple different categories. Our students show up in lots of different ways with lots of assets and lots of needs. And we mean equity to represent a equitable support for our students with disabilities, for our students who are English learners, for our students who are economically disadvantaged. So we mean it quite broadly construed. In the next version of the standards, we are planning to include a glossary and happy to consider definitions of including definitions of.
And even in like the breakdown you just provided about for students with multi-language learners, disabilities, socioeconomics, all those pieces of like what are some of the key drivers or things you might want to consider when working with the population, especially in that lens of like social, emotional. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that feedback.
All right, thank you for sharing. I'm really big on like the continuity between what happens at school and what happens at home. And while I see that these standards are, I can already see that it's going to be great. I also want to make sure that we have some type of resources for our families. Luckily, I was working on a project a few years back where I collected activities for each of the different like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness for K-8. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you. I think that these could be really helpful as a resource as we share with schools saying like, hey, this is also something that you can use to ensure that our families have know what to do to support what's already taking place at home. So I'm just going to go ahead and send that to you via email, but thank you for the work that you do.
I have questions for you. Go ahead.
We had a panel on restorative justice last month, which is supposed to be implemented in the schools. It ties into this perfectly, but it hasn't been done. I just want to put that out. Is this a required subject or an elective?
Thanks so much for this question, Representative O'Leary. We really appreciated last month's panel on restorative justice and kudos to the state board for compiling such a strong panel of witnesses. I thought the feedback and the testimony that they delivered, particularly the student testimony, was exceptionally strong. And what I took away from that panel was that implementation is mixed. In some places, we're seeing implementation with high levels of fidelity. In others, we're seeing implementation where there's some sunshine between what we would expect and what we would want to see on the ground. Once these standards are finalized, they will be required, but OSSE would not require that they be implemented through a specific course, for example. In fact, many of the strongest examples that we see of full SEL, school level SEL is when SEL standards are fully integrated through all of the academic content work and non-academic content work that's happening at the school level. So where we see, for example, students in a second grade classroom that are grappling with a challenging mathematics topic, leveraging their SEL skills to persist and to actually master that concept or skill. Where we see students in high school who are passing each other in the hallway and avoid an altercation by leveraging their conflict resolution skills. skills. And so we are developing resources to support our schools in our educators, our students, our LEA leaders to fully implement these standards in lots of different ways, because we know that implementation differs depending on whether you're in an elementary school, whether you're in a high school, depending on the student needs and frankly, the educator needs at the building level. But we do anticipate that in many cases, what we will see is implementation happening through existing courses. That's what we're continuing to hear from the educators that we engage with, that that is the most effective way to provide our students with this support. And extrapolating long term, thinking about preparing our students to thrive in life, that's actually how SEL shows up in our lives, right? We don't have 15 minutes a day that we set aside to engage in social emotional learning work. Instead, we need it when somebody bumps into us on the metro, or there's a challenging personal circumstance that we're dealing with. And so we want to equip our students with the knowledge and skills to actually be able to leverage these competencies throughout their daily lives. And we think for many of our students in school, that they will be exposed to them through the other academic content.
Thank you so much. That clears that up, and I think it's very important for everyone to understand that part of it, the heart of it, rather than the sinew and bones of it. Thank you.
All right, I know I heard Representative Henderson say we had questions. I saw the motioning for Representative York, and I think Representative Washington, Representative now.
So I'm gathering that you have not yet received the feedback from our committee. I'm not on that committee, but you will receive it, and I just want to, it's a strong document throughout, but I want to especially highlight my interest in developing more on social media and digital citizenship, especially at earlier ages. I think this is a really good opportunity to do that, and I think it's really important for our people to develop strong skills there. And also, there's reference to, as I raised with the financial literacy, we resolved that we would look for opportunities to incorporate Green New Deal, climate-related standards. So I'd like for us to do that also with LGBTQ plus inclusive education standards. So just want to underscore those asks. This is not my area of expertise. So when I was looking at the expert reviewers, it struck me that they're all from the same group. And so, I mean, for all I know, they are the group. It sounds like maybe they are. But especially based on the experience with social studies standards and with financial literacy standards, that seemed narrow to me. So I would, again, I not my field, but I would kind of look for like more diversity of the expert reviewers in the future.
Thank you for that feedback, Representative Henderson. We are excited to formally receive that memo, and it certainly will dig into that feedback and provide a formal response. On the topic of expert reviewers, two things are, well, I guess three things are true that I think it's important to name. The first of which is, as a field of education and as a country, we have significantly more expertise in academic content than we do in social emotional learning. So social emotional learning really is decades behind where we are on academic content, which means that the field of expert reviewers is smaller. The group that we are working with, Dr. Dana Godak, whose organization is called EduSolve, is very highly regarded as the premier leading expert in the field. And we know, based on our work developing academic content standards for DC, that in order for something to work for our jurisdiction, it has to resonate with our jurisdiction and be informed by our educators, our students, our stakeholder advisory groups, and our LEAs, our leaders here. And so that's why, as part of our stakeholder engagement, we were really very, very intentional about making sure that we were both getting an expert review from the experts in the field and then working with our DC community to make sure that if there were places where there was sunshine between what the experts recommended and what our DC community felt was appropriate, that we could defer to our DC community or be able to describe the expert's position, where the brain research is on this, and then actually use that. I think the best example of this is you heard during the restorative justice panel at last month's public meeting from representatives from the DCPS team leading the becoming work happening there. We've been working very closely with them, and they advised that they also base much of their work off of the Castle standards, but made some modifications. And we actually incorporated those same modifications into our standards because they are working for DCPS. And so we really wanted to take advantage of that. But the point is very, very well taken, and we're happy to take another look and make sure that we really are being as inclusive as possible and getting viewpoints that are as diverse as possible.
Yeah, I think that's an important check, the local check. I really appreciate. I'm just wondering, you know, if there have been instances in the past where like one school of thought becomes dominant and kind of there's a potential to go the wrong path. And so it's just good to have as many checks as we can.
I really appreciate that and share that concern. So I'm grateful to you for elevating it.
I think just on the environmental piece, I know Marcus and Assistant Superintendent Ross can probably say this more eloquently than that, but part of one of the main parts is agency, right? Student agency, and where students develop that sense of being able to advocate for themselves and for things that they care about. So even if it's not explicitly called out, and I'm not sure that it's appropriate in this sense to explicitly name one versus the other, that we're building those skills that then students can take, like the wonderful students we saw from Schools Without Walls and all the other folks there about something that they're passionate about, like the environmental.
Yeah, I just had a question about your response to Representative O'Leary's question earlier about implementation. It makes a lot of sense to me how a second grade teacher could teach perseverance and, you know, looking at a math problem, but and also about Representative O'Leary's concerns about the delayed timeline and giving teachers time to get this training. Like if you're asking an AP, I don't know how it's gonna look, but if you're asking an AP US history teacher to teach about, you know, collaboration or something, and you're only giving them 2 or so months to do that, is it that the impact of the SEL education and maybe the AP US history curriculum, you know, learning about the Continental Congress, and then your teacher says, okay, let's take 15 minutes to talk about the importance of collaboration. I feel like that might be ineffective.
I love this question, Representative Yarkin, and I love that you used Continental Congress as an example, because in order to develop the Constitution, the Founding Fathers needed SEL skills, right? And so there is a real opportunity for that AP US history teacher to leverage SEL and to help highlight how they were able to negotiate in order to get to where they wanted to go, to ultimately reach an agreement. So that was a perfect example. I spent a little bit more time talking in response to Representative O'Leary's question about what this might look like at a second grade classroom. In a high school, we see many schools that are leveraging their advisory period in order to do some more explicit teaching of social emotional learning skills. And in a high school and in a middle school, of course, we're very proud of the middle school AP that we have across the district. And some of the work happening there really is more explicit rather than being infused, but there are opportunities to infuse SEL in many lessons. And even as simple or as a sort of routine as a teacher highlighting and elevating and celebrating where a student is successfully leveraging their SEL skills in order to grapple with a particular challenge is one way that these standards can be reinforced in a full range of content areas. But you are absolutely correct that we would expect this to look different in a second grade classroom than it looks in a high school classroom, which is one of the reasons why we took so seriously and are, as we continue to work to finalize the standards, are really attending to feedback from the public and feedback that we anticipate receiving from this body about alignment. How is it that we're making sure that the standards in each grade span are reinforcing the standards in the earlier grade spans?
And then I guess that ties into the next question, which is when it becomes like almost maybe a little less scientific at the higher grade levels where it's more casual mentions and inclusions of it in the curriculum, how do you test that that's working?
I love this question too, because a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have a great answer for you, and now I do. So in parallel to this work stream, we are launching DC's first citywide school climate survey instrument. We're piloting that with an advisory cohort. 14 LEAs are participating in our first administration of that survey tool this spring. We'll learn a lot from this advisory cohort and their experience, and then we're launching it system-wide next school year during the 24-25 school year. And once this vehicle is publicly launched, we'll then be in a position where we have school culture climate data from every DC LEA. The work that is happening now at the agency level and that our advisory cohort is helping us do is bring together the social emotional learning standards that we're developing. What is it that we expect every student at a minimum to know and be able to do? And then how do we, how are we measuring that at the school level? And we're measuring that school climate, not just from the student perspective, not just from the educator perspective, but also from the community perspective. And we're really excited because those data points, plus the standards, which set the floor, plus the professional learning supports that we provide will help ensure that we're developing a system where we have data that tell us where additional resources and supports are needed, standards that tell us what those minimum expectations are, and then are able to push in and provide those supports. So it's a great question and not dissimilar from how we answered the question around the course climate, the course collection that's underway. It's just a piece that we're really excited to launch next year. And then of course, to publish that information on report cards based on the work that this group has been doing with our team.
Yes, but I think it was answered. I was gonna ask about like how you can track implementation, but you kind of answered that with measuring its effectiveness.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Just first of all, thanks for the outreach on this. I mean, you really have gone, I would say above and beyond in terms of reaching out to experts in the city, collecting feedback, and I really think the product, it looks fantastic. Just a quick question here, as I look at the self-awareness and self-management standards, kind of the one word I think of though, which is a hybrid almost of the two, like if you look at the 6 through 8 and self-awareness, the 3 through 5 and self-management, is like developing self-confidence, which is not spelled out specifically here in those terms, but it's about having a positive self-identity. So you're sure of who you are, the ability to set goals and outcomes. But then kind of along the way, every youth is going to run into people who will try to tear them down. So you can't do that, or there'll be obstacles that come up. How do we, and maybe it's just that these two get us there in conjunction, but how do we keep that self-confidence high so that as those things inevitably come up, through their youth, through college, there's a system just still, they'll be able to overcome it, and believing in the goal is sometimes at least half the battle. So how do you see that working?
Yeah, I love this question too, and it's absolutely the right one. I mean, I think in part, this is something that we can't fully see until we begin to implement the standards and get feedback from students and school communities about how these standards are working in implementation. And certainly I really appreciate the framing, appreciate the connection that you're making across the standards. These standards are truly designed to reinforce each other. They're, any one standard should not be pulled out to stand on its own. So we see that alignment and that reinforcing as a good thing, but always want to be mindful of the fact that we're not duplicating things. So it's a fine line that we're trying to walk. At the school level, this work is really about trying to build school communities that are going to support all students and reinforce that positive self-view and confidence in every single student. And then the goal is how we can make sure that we're equipping students with the skills that they need so that when they go out into the world, they're able to maintain that. And so there are things that we can do at the school level that will help students get there, but ultimately this is the challenge of a lifetime, right? Like, how can you continue to support students in developing a learner mindset so that they are able to continue to have new experiences, react to those new experiences in a healthy and positive way, and learn from them to continue to build on and reinforce the very good learning that has happened at the school level.
And just to build on the learner mindset, I do want to point in the self-management, the 3 to 5 framework. It talks about demonstrating a growth mindset and overcoming challenges, which I think is sort of
Exactly, like that ties to the 6 through 8 and self-awareness. I think they fit in well together there. Lastly, I'll just echo what Representative Henderson said. I think on the social media engagement, it's like the skills here are really important when you enter that larger kind of pool of thought where you'll have more people who say things about you. And it's trust me, from personal experience, it's an interesting place that people will say things, but I think for any youth to be ready for that, it's a challenge, and just trying to teach those skills and connect it to like the larger social media is really important. So I appreciate everything there, and thanks for your work on it. It's great.
All right, I believe Vice President Patterson has a question, and Vice Representative Chamberlain has a question. I don't know if anyone else has questions on SEL. All right.
I'll go real quick, I hope. You made reference for the climate. You said you have 14 people that you working groups that you were working with. I don't know if you wanted to focus 14, but I would just want to know the consistency of that particular group that's working there, so that there's representation. So give me a little background into who.
Love this question. Yes, this was an opportunity that was opened up to all LEAs, and to participate in the advisory cohort. We do have our representation is at the LEA level. It does include both public and public charter LEAs. So there, as we would need to have 14 across our sector, given the split that we have here in DC. And we were quite intentional about making sure that we included both our larger public charter LEAs and our smaller public charter LEAs, because we know that the resources and needs at different types of LEAs are different. And then when it comes to implementing a tool like this, the implementation may look different. One of the pieces that we're really excited to work with our LEAs on is how we can support them in working collaboratively with their communities to get high quality feedback. A survey instrument is only as strong as the feedback that it is able to take. So we could have a beautiful survey instrument, but if nobody is actually taking it, then the data aren't going to be worth a whole lot for us. So we are excited to learn a lot from this process, and of course, would be happy to share more with this group down the road, particularly as it dovetails to a conversation that I know has been top of mind and this group has been engaged in, which is how does this information show up on the school report card?
All right, Representative Chang.
Representative Chang has logged off, but he typed his question in the chat. His question is, where will educators have time to do this right? What will be removed in order to create space to properly address this?
Yeah, I love this question, and I think I've touched on the answer a couple of times before, but one of the strongest types of integration of SEL that we're seeing right now in DC is actually that full integration of SEL into work that is currently happening. And so SEL is not an add-on to work that's already underway. Instead, it is really how educators can do work that is already underway.
All right, I think that is our last question. I think obviously both of the updates on both financial literacy standards and SEL. We look forward to be communicating with you all about both as we move closer to the finish line for each of those things. I am going to transition the meeting. So thank you, Oxy. I know you're always like, oh, we're great. Thank you, Oxy. You're pretty good. I'm now going to transition the meeting actually in two ways. One, to our fellow Rochelle Yombo, who will be group members on our February public meeting panel on restorative justice. That will be followed by a wider discussion of the panel and potential next steps. I also have a conflicts and have to depart from the rest of the meeting, so Vice President Patterson will run the rest of the meeting after the break. And I'm leaving these cookies here because someone gave them to me and I can't eat a whole thing of Costco cookies. So please eat the cookies and take the cookies. I did want to say that. All right, so I'm turning over to Rochelle.
Thank you for the introduction, President Thompson. I wanted to start off by thanking Representative Henderson for not only introducing a very important topic, but also for helping to ensure that the panel was successful. As you all know, the topic of last month's panel was restorative justice. I think the purpose of the panel was to enhance the board's understanding of what restorative justice is and how it is and how to implement it in these. The four person panel was made up of a student, principal, a restorative justice practitioner, as well as a DC spokesperson. And some common themes that came up throughout the panel included emphasis on relationship building and capacity for change as prerequisites for implementation, barriers to its success, including a lack of funding or a lack of a centralized approach, as well as the importance of stakeholder buy-in. Denise Edwards, who's a donor highlighted that restorative justice can shape school culture by creating safe relationships, including feelings of safety. Izzy Jackson of School Talk PC cited benefits seen in schools implementing restorative justice, saying that schools use their restorative practices to promote trust, compassion, accountability, safety, collaboration, and growth. And to quote our student panelist, Kate Barnes, restorative justice has the potential to uplift not just individuals, but entire communities. Let us commit to empowering the next generation by nurturing this potential for its full success. Now I would like to open the floor for members to share anything they wanted to highlight and open up the discussion for next steps regarding the work that we've done.
Discussions. Representative Henderson.
Yeah, I just would like to thank Rochelle for what she did to make the panel happen. I thought it was a really strong panel and would love for us to take some further steps and would be eager to hear what others think about how it can move forward towards a resolution or what would be most helpful.
I think one thing that I'm just be interested to see as we go into budget season is a lot of this was funded from extra funds. It's just how much of it survives. And we know.
Just said it a little bit loud.
So we know, I think a good portion of this, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was funded through extra funding. Or at least that's where it was accounted for. And you know, that 190 million is shifted back to local funds this year. We all saw the cuts to our public schools that we proposed, and I actually just wonder how much of this is going to survive the budget process, to be honest. So that'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think what we've done as a board is important, just to fully fund and support the UPSFF. That's the most important thing we can advocate for this year, because programs like this otherwise, I think it would be a chopping block, potentially eliminated. And then just outside, I would have trouble justifying keeping them over firing teachers if those are the choices. So I really think what we've done with advocating for funding is the most important thing. And we just need to keep doing it, whether it's by resolution or testifying. And I know you were down there with me to testify at recent hearings. So I think we should just keep doing that as a board, strongly endorsing full funding for schools.
Thank you. Other Yes, ma'am.
I might have tuned out, but just how big like the restorative justice work and the social emotional are gonna marry each other or complement one another. Yes, it's just a overarching question.
Others?
Vice
at this
President
point-
Patterson? Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Yes, I have a question about Representative Henderson mentioned wanting a resolution. It is a, but I'm confused as to what end. Is it a resolution to get this into all schools, or is it a resolution to address a particular issue where restorative justice practices would be solutions?
Think we would need to work that out in the committee that it lives in, so.
So are you tasking that with the committee? Going to the committee and ask them what they would like to do, next actions? And also, since we have our spring retreat coming up, this is something that you would bring up in the spring retreat as far as work.
Yeah, I understand that we might need to stick a pin in it till we resolve like what our committees are gonna look like.
Okay,
But
but it can't be part of the discussion. Okay, thank you. Was there other discussion? I think with that being said, looking at faces, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. Hopefully, we'll also reshuffle so that everybody's not so far away, and distance from each other, so there's lots of room now that Ozzy has left down at this end. But we're on a 5-minute break.
Rochelle's got the cookies.
So we have all had long days, so in the next few minutes, we're gonna start this back up. Water. And next on our agenda are reports, but I want to go back because we were having some spotty sound with our executive director. To start with our executive director, she's ready to give her report.
I am ready. Can you all hear me now?
Now, wonderful, man.
Perfect. Good evening, members of the DC State Board of Education. The agency has completed its performance oversight hearing last week, and we are preparing our budget testimony, which is scheduled for April 5th. The state board has hired a new temp to assist us with our communications work. Please join me in welcoming Jessica to our team. The job announcement for our permanent communications person will go live on Monday. I will be sure to share around the link. You will experience two significant changes tonight in tonight's meeting as a part of our new bylaws and SOPs that were passed in February. First, our interagency meetings for the next 2 months are listed on the bottom of your printed agenda. You will see that for the month of March, we have Chairman Mendelson and Dr. Grant's meetings listed. And for April, we have Dr. Grant, Deputy Mayor for Education, and we're waiting on a date from the DC Public School Charter Board. And once we have that day, we'll make sure to share it with you all. We ask that you refer to the bylaws and SOPs on how to submit agenda items for those meetings. And following those meetings, we will be sending out email follow-ups. The second thing is that we'll be discussing and voting on public meeting panels in our working session. This is something new that members asked for. I look forward to our discussion later this evening. As a reminder, you will get personal copies of the bylaws and SLPs at this Saturday's retreat. In preparation for both of these changes, Jim Briones, the Deputy Director of Policy and Research, and myself will be completing Robert Rules of Order training later this month. Lastly, the staff is excited to host the board's annual spring retreat this Saturday at the Sherwood Recreation Center. Please arrive by 9:45 a.m. Lastly, if your badge is lost or is no longer working, please email Javon with a headshot and we will have it ready for you by next month's working session. Thank you, Vice President Patterson. That concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Questions for our executive director? All right, thank you, Bernice. Yes, I apologize, Representative Washington, go right ahead.
Just wondering what the location is for the retreat.
The location is Sherwood Recreation Center. We will put it in the calendar invite, but it is in Ward 6, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, 10th and G, basically. That's correct, sir.
I want to record this because I've never been there on the two trees. What's it gonna look like?
Well, there is a section on the agenda tonight that will lay out everything that's on the agenda for the retreat. But it is based off of feedback from members. They were asked to fill out a survey about what they wanted to hear about, and members ranked the items. And so we'll be sharing that later today.
Very much. We'll move right along. With the administrative report, we did not meet. We moved that meeting, so we have no report at this particular time. And I'm wondering, I don't believe they met school, community, and well-being.
We did not meet.
All right, with my wonderful co-chair on, is he here? Okay, he may have stepped out for just a moment. We did have a meeting, the state level and systemic policy committee did have a meeting, and the minutes are in your folders. I'll try to just hit the highlighted aspects of it. Hold on 1 second. It was quite a lengthy meeting. Some of the highlights, basically, we did, there's a memo of recommendations for the draft social emotional learning, which we've talked about earlier today. So I appreciate all the members that contributed to that particular aspect of it. Committee also discussed ways to improve participation in the student feedback survey on the draft SEL standards and the lessons learned for the next time a survey is conducted. Students' results are also included with the work session material. Members briefly discussed the revised draft of the financial literacy levels, which we had tonight. Also, the committee members discussed the insights they would like to see on the March public meeting on SEL. Another big part of this, which we submitted over the weekend and finally passed this past Monday, we talked a lot about the resolution, what we want to see in that. I think while everybody didn't get everything they wanted, I think we came down with some good things and came with a better product that was approved this past Monday. With that, that is basically the gist of our meeting. It was about an hour. There's other committee members who are here or present. They want to add anything to that. That was also discussed. That should be noted.
I think you summarized it well.
Thank you. With that being done, the student advisory committee.
Yeah, so last meeting was February 12th, where we met with Georgetown professor, Dr. Kristen Sinclair, on gauging student community engagement and student voice within DC. We also reviewed and passed 2 resolutions, SR 24-5 and SR 24-6, both passing unanimously but the SAC is calling for further discussion around the inclusion of AP exam score data, with members of our committee believing it would be helpful. It would be a helpful additive along with a listing of AP courses offered at each school, and others against its inclusion, having concerns about equal accessibility of AP courses across schools in the district. For SR 24-5, our next meeting will be this upcoming Monday, March 11th, where we will hear SR 24-7, recommending policies that address chronic absenteeism and truancy, and SR 24-8, financial literacy standards resolution. And we will also continue finalizing our top action items for the remainder of the year.
Thank you, Representative Bill. One more time. All right. Members, are there any external committee reports that you want to share for those who are on external committees? No hands raised. I'll move to the next thing. Following the approval of the State Board Standard Operation Procedure Manual at our February public meeting, working sessions will now include a standard agenda item where members vote on public meeting panel topics 2 months before each meeting. Tonight's working session will focus on potential panel topics for our April and May public meetings, followed by a vote on each. Each Monday, our policy fellows email out the roundup. The first item in the email is the 2024 public meeting panel topics. As we advance, we will discuss and vote on the panel topics suggested at each working session. If no topics have been proposed in the tracker, the floor will be open for suggestions. If no suggestions are given, there's a vote not to have a panel for that month. Let us get started. There are no panel suggestions in the tracker for April or May. Are there any suggestions for members? From members? The floor is open for suggestions. I see some
Hello,
smiles.
can folks hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, hello. I would propose that we do one on absenteeism, attendance, and engagement. I think it's tied. Well, my perspective on it is that it's tied to family engagement and invite folks like the Flamboyant Foundation who have been doing, I think, very thoughtful parent teacher home visits in a non-reprimanding way for years, and learn from how that has built relationships and trust in systems that create that line of communication that I think, at least for the earlier grades, is a way to re-engage students and families in school. And I would also propose that we bring in some of for higher level grades, folks who are thinking about vocational school, understanding that the research shows that attendance for vocational schools is significantly, not statistically significantly, but also significantly higher for high school grades.
Representative Chang, and you're talking about for April, is that correct, sir? You're proposing that for April?
I am, I think anytime it fits.
Anytime it fits? Okay. Also, I want to recognize Representative Goulet.
What I would love to see is a panel, I know it's a little bit outside our lane, but would be to have some of the experts. We know who they are, the Mary Levy's, folks like that come in and kind of give us a rundown of the proposed budget when it comes in. I think that's going to be really something the public would like to see. I think we give them a chance to have a little bit more time than traditionally they get at the council, which is just the 3 minutes for everything.
Okay.
And I think that's gonna be what's on everybody's mind in the month of April, is what's proposed in those budgets, what it really means, like the per teacher cost, how that's going up, how the administrative fees shift back and forth between schools. And I'd like to see, because we don't know what the budget will look like, but representatives also from the charter community there to see if there's really, are we really following the letter and spirit of the UPSFF, if it's in the law, are we not? Are we trying to divert funds away from, the students in our charter sector? And just kind of get a range of different opinions on those topics from true experts who've been doing this for quite a while on both the operating and capital funding side. So I think that's something that would really resonate with probably everybody who follows education.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you are proposing for April.
I would think April
To
would
fit
be
the
the.
time, frame.
Where April is, the budget oversight here is like April 8th, 3rd. It's early.
So what's the date of our, I think the budget comes out the 20th or the 22nd, somewhere, May 20th.
I just know our
Yeah.
oversight.
Yeah, the mayor's budget comes out on the 20th. She meets with council to present her budget on the 22nd of March. And the state board's budget oversight hearing is April 5th.
Forgive me for my ignorance, so when would be the 20th would be our meeting? I just don't
That is
think that would
correct.
be, since that's the day of the budget release, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get
Representative Reed,
that.
I just don't think it'd be quite enough time for them to be able to absorb it all, because they'd just be reacting to it that afternoon maybe, so.
That's fair. I was hoping if it was available earlier, because then we're gonna basically be having a panel and post our own oversight hearing. Is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking more kind of on the broader spectrum, not like SBOE's micro budget kind of.
No, I'm talking about education.
Yeah, like the broader thing, like, yeah, so I think that might be something really valuable and something everybody's talking about at that time.
And when does the council vote on the budget?
They'll
It would
take the
be
first
after.
vote, 70 days to the final vote, so probably count 14 back from that, so around day 56, roughly, or a day or two before that would be vote number 1.
So it'd be in time for both of
Yeah,
that.
it would be that before the markups.
So executive director, in hearing the discussion, when would you suggest?
I would say one, we've already started planning for March because we started planning for March before the bylaws were passed. So we are working on the SEL panel for that. And I think that the budget, having it in April, if that is what you all would like to do, would be the better time because it is before the first markup, which happens in May. So that is the
sounds to
time
me-
when the council's still digesting and they haven't made decisions yet in the first markup.
And I support Representative Chang's panel, if May would be okay with him, that would be something I would definitely think would be valuable too.
Representative Reed?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. April makes sense for financial education. However, I'm curious about Representative Chang's panel. I wonder if we can refine the topic a bit because we've talked about absenteeism. And we've had flamboyant before, but I do hear what he's saying about like the engagement piece, like what the students in school. So I'm just curious, like, if Representative Chang, you can like elaborate a little more, because we've been hitting the topic of absenteeism over and over.
Fair,
Like,
fair. Yeah.
like, or like, is there another piece of absenteeism?
Yeah. So I went down a bit of a rabbit hole on the research and have been finding something that I think many of us believe to be true and know to be true, which is students don't, many students and families don't see, don't feel engaged by schools, and that is a huge barrier for why they are not going to class, right? And so I think if, and I don't, I apologize, I was not expecting this question, so it is a more an inchoate thought. So the title of the panel I do not know, but it is very much, Dr. Reed, I think, around what you're saying of more on the engagement side, but engagement is also too broad, right? Maybe it's the thread that connects, I think, the lower and upper grades, as the two examples that I provided, is really around re-identifying what families truly care about from schools, and whether that is, I think, at the lower grades, a connection to the teacher to be able to ask questions, right, and understand, have that relationship with the teacher, or in the upper grades, understanding what the purpose of the curriculum is. I think part of it, as we've been digging into the absenteeism topic, right, that you rightly pointed out, we have discussed previously, that stands out to me as I have been talking now with more high school students who are not in class. The one thing that really stands out to me that hurts, and I also understand where this is coming from, is they don't see it being helpful for them anymore, and why they go at all. And I think we really have to address that. It's an existential problem for us.
So is that like a school climate culture thing? I know after the vote on Monday, that climate culture piece is something that's like supposed to be developed, or are you thinking like it's truly how we're looking at, like, I think the last panel, I know the last panel that we had about absenteeism, we were talking about the Carnegie units and how like that might not even make sense anymore in regards to, students are in buildings, but not actually getting to certain classes, but then they pop up at certain classes, et cetera. So do you think it's school climate culture, or
Yeah.
you're still missing something, or something else, or like just literally how we're thinking about education?
Yeah, what are we teaching at all, and why are we teaching it? Maybe, you know what? I think your question is spot on. Let me give it some more thought. If folks have an idea for how the sort of disparate points I've made might connect, I'm happy to hear it. But Dr. Reed, let me knowing now that we'll be voting on this at the working sessions for future public meetings, let me put my thoughts together in a little bit more thoughtful way, and then present that as a panel option for a future meeting.
Representative O'Leary.
Two things. When we have that panel, I would really like to hear about the 60-40 number and what has happened since they should have figures that they can compare with the 80-20 from 2 years ago. And I would really like to hear from OSSI or from DCPS about what the difference is. Has that 60-40 made an impact on attendance? And we also have a resolution on our agenda about absenteeism and truancy, which I think that we're going to talk about a little later, but that may tie into this concept of talking about absentee and attendance, which with all the things that we've been working on, none of them will ever work until we solve the absentee and truancy problem.
What I will say to your comments, 60-40 rule, I think we definitely need to look at it, just to examine after a few years, well, a year of having it in place, and if the data is really there to look at. And the simple fact is because I think it might have had some unintended consequences as well. Just as much as we talk about the impact, because I know as a person who works in school administration, it definitely has changed the culture and how kids show up when they show up, because now that they know there's a difference, it's not 80-20, it's 60-40. And so there's been to me, there's been an unintended consequences at the time that we may want to look at that. We'll come back to that in a minute, but from what I'm hearing is that we have budget for April, and we're still looking for May. Was there any other ones, Representative Williams?
Well, no, I want to underscore the budget for April. I think that's a good idea. And then throw out the idea of like how we can be intentional about looking at the impacts of the budget. So for instance, like getting panelists that could speak to the budget's impact on like student safety, to staffing, to out of school time, to potential like retention, efforts, but just like thinking through the pieces that are going to be most impacted and getting, the either representatives from DCBS or someone well positioned to be able to speak on those issues.
Just to what Representative Reed and Chang were saying about like how to get students motivated to go to school. Since I've only been here since like September, but the most compelling solution I've heard of that problem is Representative Goulet's resolution about out of school time, like integrating vocational programs, apprenticeship programs, of course, part of it. So I'm really curious about where that is. Maybe that's an issue with the budget that we'll talk about later.
Are you suggesting that as a possible topic for the May?
I want to hear where it is, and I think if it is possible, I'd love to do that.
Well, I agree. I think that's a fantastic idea to have an out of school time panel on implementation. I think realistically, this budget cycle, what I'd love to see with, the path to universal out of school time would be some pilot funding in schools and neighborhoods that have been most impacted by crime and truancy to be able to get this rolling, and then, take a lessons learned from that and keep expanding, because we're never gonna, roll this out, within, 4 or 5 years, particularly with the funding issues we have. But if we don't get going on at this budget cycle, that would be a real loss. So, I think, thankfully, Councilmember Fruman's introduced a bill for universal out of school time at the council. And that bill it's not had a hearing yet, to my knowledge, but I think we just got to gradually start to roll this out. And
timing that he's.
I mean, I'd be surprised if it's before the budget cycle, to be honest, just because, once you hit the performance and budget oversight hearings, that's usually all they're doing. So I haven't heard that it's been scheduled for hearing yet, but there could be a pilot element in the budget, even if that's not done. And I think that would be the path I'd love to see. And then just pick, maybe the top 5 or 6 schools that have been most impacted by violence and try to do something in those this year. You know, and it could be some hybrid of it where we do community versus schools and try to pick up kids, because we've got, you know, people, it's hard to tie to either the neighborhood or the school with the way kids travel. But yeah, I mean, that's a long-winded way of saying, I think we got a lot of work to do to get there during a very tight budget, but I think it's a great idea for him.
But probably not with May, because
Well, I mean, if we're trying to do something in the budget, it could be. I mean, there's a whole DC Action network of folks who would probably be willing to come in and talk about this, and it might be a good way to, you know, energize it for some funding. So I'd be all in on that, but as long as others are.
I would love to see that. I think it's also a little bit apt surrounding the pushback on the omnibus crime bill.
Good point.
The criticism I've been seeing around that is like, it's not addressing the root issues. Well, I feel like supplying youth with vocational programs is kind of addressing the root issue. So I think that could end up getting a lot of support in light of all the backlash that council is getting for the sort of tough on crime approach.
So I'm hearing so far, and I appreciate that, budget in April, potentially, out of school time in May. Are there others? Yes, Representative Washington.
Something kind of just throw out there. I know. One of the things that was systemic governance. I think it was systemic governance and also the AI table. And I think we'll do the AI.
I like that one as well, and I'm gonna start looking at and call him out, Representative Best. Because I know you've been talking a lot about math and AI, and if that's something potentially you want to talk about. I know I saw your newsletter today. Really,
For sure.
and it's actually a new business that you look at. So thank you. Okay.
So the
Go right
next,
ahead, ma'am.
you know, are we voting now on April?
I believe we are, ma'am.
Okay, well, someone needs to move it and second it, and then we need to call for a vote.
I move that we take up the education budget conversation as a panel in the April public meeting.
Second.
It's been properly moved at second. Want to call this, the roll?
Yes, sir. Of course, it's not opening. I know all of you all's names. Let's hope I don't forget any of you. Representative Williams,
Yes.
Representative Chang. I think he is locked off. Representative Goulet.
Aye.
Representative Goulet.
Aye.
Representative O'Leary.
Aye.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative Reed.
Aye.
Vice President Patterson.
Did we forget Best, ma'am?
Yes, number 6. I was trying to go in order. See, this is why. Representative Best.
Aye.
Representative Villaflor.
Aye.
Aye.
Representative Washington.
Aye.
Representative Yarkin.
Aye.
Mr. Vice President, the motion has passed for the April panel to be on the budget.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll take up, I believe, the May, which the only other one that's proposed was out of school time. Panel on out of school time.
So moved.
It's been properly moved.
Second.
It's properly second. Call the roll, ma'am.
Representative Williams, I was muted, my apologies.
Present.
Representative Chang? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Representative Williams. So you're not voting for, you're just gonna vote present?
I'm voting for against it, yes.
Okay, thank you. Representative Goulet?
Aye.
Representative O'Leary?
Aye.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Best?
Aye.
Representative Reed?
Aye.
Vice President Patterson?
Aye.
Representative Villaflor?
Aye.
Representative Washington? Representative Washington?
Aye.
Representative Yarkin?
Aye.
The motion has passed for the May panel to be on out of school time.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think with that being done, we can move along since we've accomplished that. The new business, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. I want to ask members if they have any additional items for the business to add to the following list. We'll be talking about the board retreat update, the annual report update, math and artificial intelligence discussion, SR 24-7 recommending policies that address chronic absenteeism and truancy, SR 24-8 appointing new ombudsman for public education, SR 24-9 financial literacy standards resolution, and CR 24-1 honoring the late Ramona Edlin. Is there any others? I see the hand of Representative Reed. Dr. Reed.
Yes, possibly hosting some special education high school students, for a shadow experience, just to talk about that.
Okay. Did you get that, Executive Director Butler?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, do I turn it over to you to talk about the board retreat update?
Absolutely. So in front of you all, I don't know if you have the email or if it's in your packet, but nevertheless, I did just send an email, but I'll also share my screen, and I think it should show up in the room where you are, which it doesn't show up in the room where you are. Oh, it does. Perfect. So based on the feedback that you all discussed and shared in the survey, we are focusing our time on 3 areas. 1, identifying the board's strategic priorities and goals for the year. Things that you all sort of these broad areas that you want to focus on. And that will be followed by a conversation that talks about the next set of committee structure for the board. So essentially, what will be the new committees? What will the work be under them? And what will the outcomes you hope to achieve connected to each piece of work? And then we'll close out with digging more deeply into the bylaws and SOPs around committee functions and roles, and then talk about a way in which work in committees can happen using a MOCA. So we're spending the most time on well, I think it's probably the most important part in the morning. There will be breaks throughout. Then we'll spend time on committee structure and then committee functions and roles. Then we'll do a closeout and reflection. I will say that this time around, we were able to get a food waiver approved by OCP. So the state board will be able to provide food without anyone having to come out of their own pocket. But this is just, again, based on what you all, these were the top 3 things that came out of the survey. Thank you all who participated and provided your feedback. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Representative Best, excuse me. So my question is, in the committee structure or committee functions and roles, will this be an opportunity for us to switch or redesign, I guess, the structures or the committees?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's the members will engage in a facilitated activity to discuss and generate work ideas for the board around the committee structure going forward. That is a discussion that members get to decide. Staff does not decide the committees or what they will be. You all will participate in that. But we thought was probably most important based on your rankings, people wanted to do the broad the board strategic priorities first before they created new committees. And so that's what that whole structure is for that 11:20 to 12:20 hour. It's talking about committee work, committee, how many committees you all would like to see, what are the areas that you would like to, how you would like to group the bodies of work that the board is working on, work we expect to come from OSSE and so forth and so on. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you very much.
Other questions? Representative Reed?
Yes, thank you, Executive Director Butler, for the agenda, and I saw one of my ideas up here. Full transparency, I don't think I'm gonna make it on Saturday because I have a family member who's celebrating her 90th birthday and just trying to, prioritize family life. But I was thinking about the identifying state board strategic priorities, and I was wondering, is there a period for that? So are we thinking like a year, March to March, or maybe like a 2-year to get like the current people, go ahead, new people? How long you got? 12 years? Been crazy. I have 2 more years now.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, like maybe just think about it, so we don't have to keep doing this every, or just, think about a period that's most appropriate, understanding that we know we can't predict the climate of the city, but it might just be helpful to like delineate that information. Yeah, a little longer than a year if possible. And I might pop in on Saturday if I can get off of certain duties, but I don't think I'll make it. But I just want to put that out there, so.
I will say, in the examples that we have pulled to share with the state board in this area of other state boards, of other education entities in the city, all of their priorities span 2 to 5 years, depending on the board. So that is what we're going to encourage you all to do. When we have the discussion on Saturdays, to pick something that topics and areas that are broad enough to encompass, but also to just focus the board, because it's really hard to measure impact if there isn't anything defined as sort of, this is the area where we want to put down our tile. I feel like that's the wrong word, but you get what I'm saying. So I agree with you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Discussion? All right. Thank you.
And one other thing, we do know that Representative O'Leary, I keep wanting to say Vice President O'Leary, it's kind of stuck, is a vegan. If anyone else has any food restrictions, please, if you could let Darren know before you leave, that would be great. Excuse me, not Darren, Javon. My apologies.
Names all over the place now. All right. With that being done, we'll move on to the annual report update.
That is also me. So you all should have a copy. So I will say, and if you don't, I can also show that on my screen. So perfect. So this year, because and I can show my face since you all are just looking at an empty box. With the shift in our communications personnel, we stepped out and hit up a contractor to assist us with doing the publication and the print. And so what you have before you, it's also on Dropbox, and we can send you another version, is his first draft of all the edited text from members and staff and pictures. So if there are other pictures you would like to see, other things that you feel could be changed or noted, now is the time to make those changes so that when you vote at the public meeting, you will have the final. So what you have in front of you is a draft from our designer. If there are any questions or changes, I ask that you would send those, and we can resend this out to you all via email. If you would submit those changes to us no later than Friday of this week, so that our designer can go in and update our annual report so that we can get it published and ready for the vote on March 20th. And thank you all for all of the work. Yes, Representative Goulet.
Just a quick question, on page 5, are we gonna get pictures in these blanks here?
Yes,
Or-
that's why it's a draft. Those are missing. Yes.
Okay, it's good, they don't have something.
Yeah, we are not gonna leave blank squares. No, sir.
All right, great. I didn't want to do that.
Other questions for the director?
Thank you for everyone's hard work in putting this together. I know we were down our communication staff member and the team really pulled together to execute this. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Director. Okay, we're moving right along. Math and artificial intelligence discussion. Please,
Thank you.
Representative Best.
Thank you very much. So a few days ago, I sent you all a pair of draft resolutions aimed at ensuring that our students are prepared to navigate a fast evolving digital age. In order for our students to succeed, they will require a robust educational foundation that not only covers traditional subjects, also prepares them for the challenges and opportunities presented by an economy driven by emerging technologies. Math proficiency has significantly declined across the country, with only 36% of fourth grade students performing at or above basic proficiency. In DC, that number is 22%. In the Mathematics Mastery and Innovation Resolution, it seeks to revitalize our approach to math education and innovation, recognizing it as a cornerstone of critical thinking, problem solving, and analytical skills for the future success. This resolution aims to ensure that every student in the district has access to high quality math education, supported by innovative teaching materials, professional development for educators, and a nurturing ecosystem that bridges the gap between theoretical knowledge and real world application. Equally, the artificial intelligence resolution, integration resolution is a forward-thinking proposal that acknowledges the role of AI in our future. This initiative is dedicated to seamlessly integrating AI into our curriculum and standards, equipping our students with not just the ability to use these technologies, but to understand, innovate, and lead in their development. I strongly urge you to read, edit, modify the drafts that I created. It is not a finished document, but with your input, it will be and could be. I also would like to propose that the following resolutions be introduced to the state level and systemic policy committee in hopes of advancing this work.
Yes, I'm so sorry. So no one on the staff has seen those.
Okay, I will share it to the staff members.
Yes, and also, and I'm really sorry. So is this following the process that your team members laid out in the new SOPs around nothing can be presented as a resolution in the same month in which to be passed? There's like a 1 month lap. So the earliest that this resolution could be passed would be April.
Fine.
But if you could share that so that we can review it and assign a staff member, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Other discussions, comments? Yes, I apologize for really watching it, but not looking at ways.
I was just wondering if this is would be able to read the resolutions.
Absolutely. I'll send it to you all as well.
Thank you. Representative Goulet.
On the issue of the math, I definitely agree with you. That's really important. Are you recommending changes to the existing standards we have to try to get students up to proficiency, or just more of like saying we double down on what we're doing to do it better?
No, inside the resolution, there are several things such as like task force to look for more innovative approaches and programs that could help. Looking at really diving deeper into the data. I have a few of them over here, but it's not changing the standards that we're seeing, but it's like taking a deeper look at what's going on and how we can have a different approach to how we're teaching it. Very similar to what we saw with the literacy work that we've been looking at. It's very similar and kind of mirroring it as well. In addition to having like a fund where we can actually try more innovative approaches to teaching math.
Sounds great.
Anything else?
Okay. There's only one way that we are gonna solve the chronic problem of literacy and math. And that is to allow the teachers to teach how to read and how to compute, rather than spending so much time on test-taking skills, getting ready for a standardized exam. Because the numbers that we have, they're not even close to being 50%. We're not trying to get students out of schools that are lower than 50% in their skills. And it has to be a citywide movement to understand that this is a emergency and that the money needs to be spent to make sure that students can read and can compute before anything else. Because they can't do the other stuff in their classes. And there has to be a sea change in what leadership in the city does to try to allow our students to become effective students.
One of the first things in the proposal is actually having a citywide plan on that. So that's actually one of the first things that it mentions.
But because it's not the standards, that's not the
Yeah.
problem. The fact is, the teachers don't have the time to teach their subjects.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other discussions, comments? Okay. Thank you. You have to guide me through this aspect of it. Discussion on SR 24-7.
You're
Which
asking
is-
for,
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Director.
No, I was trying to see which resolution it was. I couldn't hear you.
SR 24-7, recommending policies that address chronic absenteeism in the city.
Yes. I thought President Thompson would do this, but she's not here because that's the sponsor of the resolution. But it's based off of the panel that you all did in January. This was drafted, so I guess this is the culmination of that panel resulted in this resolution.
I believe it's all in our folders. So are there comments on it? Representative Henderson?
so I know this didn't come through the school well-being committee, because I'm on that. Did it go through the other committee?
It did not come to our committee.
Nope.
No.
I'm curious on that too, then, like, just given like our new bylaws, are we, because of this, the precedent that it sets, are we, because it was my understanding that resolutions do have to go through committee, is that true?
I believe so. Director Butler, can you have some clarification?
I can add clarification. I will read it directly from the bylaws.
Yeah, thank
It
you.
says, well, I'll read it from the SOPs. The following steps should be outlined to add new business. First, it should be added under new business to discuss. Second, if a resolution is assigned to a committee, the committee will discuss and decide if the proposed topic should become a state resolution. If the committee votes down the proposed topic, the proposing member can offer an amendment version and a subsequent vote can happen. And after that point, state board members assigned to the committee will work with the sponsor to research and draft the resolution. So I am not quite sure. And then it goes on and says, email the title and description of the resolution to board leadership and CC the executive director 7 business days for the working session to get it on the agenda. And at the subsequent working session, board members will review a first draft of the resolution and discuss any feedback or concerns. And then it says to add to the SSC agenda before you go to the public meeting, so forth and so on. So I think the thing here is like, I'm not quite sure. I think you all may have, the meeting was in, public meeting panel was January. And I'm trying to pull up the February agenda. I don't know if this was discussed at last month's meeting with us. I mean, but that was a very long meeting. There's a lot going on with the last meeting. I know it was on the agenda under new business, but I'm not quite sure. I think you all were supposed to debrief the panel, but this is again all before that you all voted on the new bylaw. So I'm not quite sure. It can be reprimanded back to committee. That is one of the things that you all.
That'll be my question.
Tonight.
was gonna be my question, if we would, send it back to the committee, probably for the committee to kind of look at and add any comments or anything like that, would that be probably the best route to go?
It would be, but I would just say after Saturday, there will be new committees. So the committees that exist today will not exist. Well, I mean, they'll exist until the end of March, essentially, until new committees are voted on at the public meeting or whenever you all vote on the new committees.
Let me ask Representative Henderson, are you guys meeting this month?
Representative Best, are we meeting this month? I think we're not sure.
We're not
what-
meeting for president. We might as well wait to go to the new committee.
Yeah.
Or is that the extensive process that's gonna take like another month?
Because it sounds like it's gonna be back to a committee, whichever that committee it will be formed underneath, just to make sure that it's gone through the proper, process.
We have to vote to establish the new committees in April.
No, you will vote on the new committees at the public meeting in March after the retreat.
Yeah, that's why the retreat is right before our meeting, so we will establish and constitute them in our public meeting.
I know this is just a weird dynamic because all these things are happening in weird sequence.
Question.
Right here.
Maybe it's just me, but, and I know we had a long meeting, but I don't remember seeing this at the last meeting. Because I know we didn't talk about it, because this is very complex. Am I just on an island by myself?
I think we debriefed the panel, maybe very briefly,
Very, very brief.
but not as,
But we never saw this though.
this is the first time.
Does anybody remember seeing? Okay. Then I think that we need to table it.
So I think tabling and then referring to committee are two different things, but yes.
Then the Goulet real quick, and then we'll decide the process.
Yeah, I mean, my preference on this one would be that, I mean, I think it's a great start to it, but I do think it would benefit from having one of the new committees do a deep dive into it, because I just don't want this to be presented as kind of a holistic solution to the, you know, what's a major issue right now. Now, if there are a few things in there that we feel are really urgent, you know, I'm fine with pulling those out and just, you know, moving those forward quickly, but making sure we're clarifying that it's not the whole solution. And then I think definitely going through the committee, and I think that could be accomplished simply by, you know, after we leave here with kind of an agreement of what we think should be the process, which is committee on this, that the president then just refers it to the new committee upon its establishment.
Right.
And, you know, and I'm fine unless there's things in here that are truly urgent, you know, that we just wait and we try to really do a deep dive into the issue.
Thank you for that comment.
Yeah.
Representative Henderson.
Just to add, given, you know, what Representative Chang brought up earlier, like it sounds like there might be more that we want to consider.
Is any member, where did this come from? Is it driven by a specific introducer, was it staff generated, or where did this one kind of? Was this you representing?
Director,
No.
Director
No,
Bob.
no, I would, so the staff generated the resolution based on the testimony from the panel. And on January, there's a panel on truancy and absenteeism. And so based on that panel and the witnesses who testified, we scoured those and the staff created and drafted this resolution.
Thank you.
But that was the instruction that the staff had after the last working session in February.
Representative Goulet.
Just really quickly, one more thing. What I would love to see happen is this go to committee, the staff generate it, and then maybe this be a resolution that's co-introduced by all members of the board who'd like to, what really is the issue of the day in the city, which is truancy. So I think, you know, setting this concept to committee coming up with something that maybe all members will want to, you know, put their name to, and then hopefully getting a unanimous vote. But I could see this project actually going, you know, through the summer or something like that. And then maybe in the fall, we can come up with some comprehensive recommendations on truancy. I think it's a great start to it. I don't want to in any way criticize the product that we've seen today, but I think it can really benefit from a lot of work on this.
What I'm hearing, and I truly appreciate and thank you, Representative Henderson, for asking for the process and making sure we adhere to the process of doing resolutions, is that we're gonna resend it back to a committee that will be established, that will take the place of the well-being committee, so to speak, whatever that is called. And as they'll take a look at it and then bring it back with any type of revisions or anything like that. Yeah. We pretty much in agreement with that process.
Yeah.
Director, you also heard?
Yes, that works for us.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to SR 24-8, appointing a new ombudsman for public education.
Yes, so this will be, we have not put the person's name in yet because we are not prepared to announce publicly to the public. But once we are able to do that, the name has been shared with you all. We will insert that into the resolution draft that you have before you.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone who, whatever way that they did, participated in the process. Those processes aren't easy. So I do appreciate everybody, whether it's a comment done some other way, whatever, or actually being part of the interview panels. I appreciate each and everyone giving up their time and their comments. So thank you. Moving on to SR 24-9, financial literacy standards and resolution. I know that was presented today. Is there anything else that we want to comment on?
I would just say if you all will review it and if you have any edits, if you could send those to Kathleen so that we can get that back to OSSI. That would be the best process. So that if there is something missing in this resolution that you would like to see, if you can get it to Kathleen by Friday so that we can get it to OSSI so if they can make whatever changes they need to make before the resolution is voted on. And we can have it back in time to post.
So I want to re-emphasize what she just stated. By Friday, please, because we don't want to, as there's been a practice lately, working over the weekend and not posting in the 3-day time period that we would like to. So if you could get that to us, any comments by Friday, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, any other comments? All right, CR 24-1, honoring the late Ramona Edlin. I'll speak to this one. I'll start the conversation on this one, and then I'll also ask if the former vice president will also comment if he would like to. Dr. Edlin was an individual who served our children for quite some time. On both sides of the house, she was just a adamant, unapologetic fighter for education, specifically among marginalized communities, students, families. I consider her, I know when I first came into education, she was one of my mentors and one of the people who really helped me get grounded and how to advocate for families, especially in underserved communities. So I proposed this. She passed about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks now. One note that was just interesting to me, I did not know this. The term African-American was coined by her, along with Jesse Jackson. And I just thought that was just so phenomenal. I did not know that. But she basically coined that with Jesse Jackson back in the day. And now we actually see that across the country, a phrase that she put together along with Jesse Jackson. So I'm proposing that we present a resolution for her. Just an awesome Washingtonian, great fighter for equity in education. And I'll turn it over to Representative O'Leary if he would like to add comments as well, but he can look better than I do.
She was a friend of mine for 40 years. In the education society in the city, there was a giant, and this was before charter schools. She became a giant in the charter sector, but before that, she was just someone that influenced many hundreds, maybe thousands of people. This is well-deserved recognition.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone that we might invite to, sometimes we'll present the resolution to.
I would-
Appropriate person.
I mean, there's so many people that she touched, the people who come to mind most, just because later in her work, who she was working with. DC Charter Alliance, Executive Director, Ariel Johnson. She was on her board, and that's how I received the notification, so to speak, that she had passed. We may want to invite her. Pat Bradley also worked, who is the CEO of Friendship, worked very closely with her, served on the board with her, was part of her selection for some of the other things that work that they've done. And I'll reach out to either one of them to see if they want to be present for the presentation, and I appreciate you suggesting that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? Right, thank you. We did have some other additions, and I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen for just a quick second, because I think you wanted to have to follow up next steps on SEL.
Yes, so in your folders or online, if you're an online person, you have the committee's approved recommendations on revisions and some questions on the SEL standards. We are asking board members to provide any feedback or additions by noon on Monday. The committee left space for that, given that the student survey was still open when the committee meeting happened. We also got some more information and responses from Ozzy today. And when the memo was drafted for the members, the public meeting cannot happen, and we need to get some comment at the public meeting about the SEL standards. So the members are asked to all bring feedback by Monday at noon. And I'll be holding office hours if you would like to tell me in person what your feedback is on Friday and Monday. And I will send invitations for that tomorrow morning, or you can just send an email. A revised draft of the letter with any comments and feedback incorporated will be sent to you on next Friday. Any final feedback will be due on the 18th. And then the draft we shared with Ozzy on the 19th is the goal, which would leave them 2 weeks before the working session material deadline for April. We will send that to you on the email. I don't expect you all to remember it right now. But that is an outline of the rest of the process. Are there any questions?
Questions, discussion? All right, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, so now we've come to that part that I think everybody kind of looks forward to. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I apologize.
There was one more item from Representative Reed. Go ahead.
Yes, and
Director Butler.
I apologize.
I know you were, I was doing the same thing. I'm like, I want to get out of here too. But I won't make this really long. The DC Special Education Collaborative reached out. They are looking for folks to host their students, high school students. And when they reached out, I was like, oh, well, you know, most of us we're remote. We don't necessarily like the board reps aren't necessarily in the office. But I was wondering if there was like a day that we can maybe host them, maybe 1 or 2 of us come down, even for like 4 hours, just to tell them what it's like to be a State Board of Education rep. Maybe they can help with like packaging public engagement activities, materials, just 4 hours, maybe a handful of students, it's not a lot. And they will be, of course, hosted, guided with their person, so that's the liability piece. But I was hoping that we could host them, and it's anytime between March 18th to June 18th. I'm more than happy to like be the liaison to make that happen. But I understand we have to pick a day that's not too disruptive to our office, and then like actually have something meaningful for them to do. So one, I wanted to know like if the board is interested in that. Dr. Butler, are you open to, you know, a couple students coming down to the office here? And if so, I think I emailed that information in the contact, so. That's it.
Director Butler?
Well, I think we are definitely open to that. I think if you could help coordinate so that we can identify a date and time. And with it only being 4 hours, I mean, one of the things that we, particularly with the summer coming, it's always good to have some of our swag bags created so that we can pick up and go to events. And so that could be an ideal task since we already have the materials in the office. And we could set them up and reserve a room on the 11th floor So that's not a problem. And it may be helpful to think through sort of a larger experience you want them to have. If you want them to hear from other state board members, if you want to have like some informational sessions with the ombudsman and the chief student advocate office.
Sure, so I'll contact you to like flesh it out a little bit to find the right day, and then also loop you with David, so.
They give community service with that.
But maybe, I just know it's more of an experience, it's kind of filling the gap for vocational experience for our students with disabilities. They reach out to other agencies who haven't been as responsive, so we can set the tone for our city for that, so.
And I will say, if, oh, go ahead, sorry.
And getting the hours of community service never can hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're more interested in the experience, but yeah, I mean, I can ask David if if that's what they wanna do, say.
I don't know if it's helpful, but they're willing to come and join us at the SAC meeting if it's a Monday.
Cool, that might give us two opportunities, and that will allow them to see their peers in action, and that's kind of inspiring, because a lot of times students with disabilities aren't included in those conversations, so I appreciate you for putting that. So I'll also coordinate with you to identify a day.
Yeah. Well, actually, if you could coordinate with Rochelle on the staff to work with the SAC, that would be great.
Will do. Thank y'all for your guidance and time. I appreciate y'all for being open to the opportunity.
I think it's a wonderful idea, and I appreciate you presenting it. I'm supportive. I know that as an individual, I can just, speak for myself, but I'm supportive in any way that I can be supportive during that day or whatever the case may be. I'll try to make sure that my schedule is open so that I can also be here to help as well. So I really appreciate you doing that, because they don't have that opportunity. And we should set the standard around our students and everything like that to make sure they're included in every experience that they can possibly have. So thank you so much for presenting that. You have another comment? I apologize.
Did you
You got two people tonight.
Just a follow-up, Darren mentioned this, we have like a senior celebration day with the SAC.
What day,
I think it's in June or maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the June SAC meeting is the senior day.
Y'all the first Monday?
Second Monday.
Okay, thank y'all.
Representative Washington, will be next to me next time, that, you can put aside comments and stuff like that. I'm gonna put you right here, okay? But with that being said, and having a good laugh, real quick, were there any other new business that we had or we moved to adjourn? Yes, sir.
I don't know, if there's anything really the state board can do about this. I know probably a lot of it is over the head, but my school, is facing significant budget cuts. I don't know if this is citywide, but, just based on, I'm not sure how reliable it is, but I've heard that the entire Chinese department is going to be cut. And one performing arts teacher is going to be cut. And I've taken Chinese all 4 years of high school, and I found it a really enriching experience. There's probably 50 kids in the Chinese program right now in my school. And that is, kids who maybe taken potentially 3 years of Chinese, maybe even more, including middle school, won't be able to continue their Chinese education because of cuts. And same with the performing arts department. I've heard that it's either the creative drama theater teacher, it's the only theater teacher at my school without walls, or the choir teacher. And if either of those teachers are cut, that means the entire departments will be cut. The students at school without walls will either not have choir or will not have theater. And so I don't really know what can be done. I know the budget is very complex, and hard decisions have to be made, but I think cuts to language and performing arts are easier cuts to make than to some of the core subjects, but I think that the impact that has on students is outsized.
Right. So I'll ask a few questions real quick in response to that. To respond to that. Your LSAT at your school, you guys have,
Yeah.
have you had discussions with them as far as, because a lot of times when budgets come down with the schools, the LSATs are the first to sit down with the principal and kind of go over them and stuff like that. Have you guys had discussions and have the students kind of made their thoughts on it known or had the opportunity to do so?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because I want to make sure that we're following the process and do what we can do as we do some advocacy work. Is from what I'm hearing from you, is that make sure that we all the right students have been touched the LSATs first, where that starts in the school itself and then the larger community. So what I would suggest is that if we can find out a little bit more about what the LSATs are, what your LSAT and your school is kind of deciding how they're trying to base their conversations. Because I know, like I said, with some schools, more so than the schools in my community, those LSATs do have access to other funds sometimes, because of just their fundraising, their PTOs and stuff like that. I've actually seen schools actually save positions. I've actually seen where my children go to Ludlow Taylor. I saw us actually save a position at Ludlow Taylor at one particular time. We were we were making some cuts, and because of the PTO and the money that they raised throughout the year and stuff like that, they were able to actually cover with the actual position. So, want to just kind of, and I'm more than happy to work with you on it because I've sat on the LSAT trying to, see where they are in their decision making about that as they go through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I might be jumping the gun. I just didn't want to let the session, go to rest without mentioning that, because I know next month it might be out of our hands.
Representative Larry.
You're not jumping the gun. While you were talking, all I was thinking about was the new Green New Deal. Anybody can testify that opposed to me. Anybody can testify or opposed to me. We'll never say anything.
Yeah, I've talked to some of my friends about that.
We know your power with your friends, so get one.
Yeah.
Schools all over the city are being crushed by the budget cuts. It's not, you're not unique, but that's a problem.
I think your timing's perfect on it. I mean, I was just looking back at a chart I put together. I'm going to send to everybody on the board. It estimates the buying power cut to each school. It's a bit of an estimate, but within a percent or two probably. I mean, School Wall is getting hit with basically a 9.4% cut to its buying power next year, which is devastating. And this money can be put back. It's about, just estimated about 170 million we need, and revenue did go up about 67. So there's a path to it, but it's got to be put first. I remember, I was fortunate enough to work for Vince Gray when he was council chair and mayor during the Great Recession. And at that time, we had a 322 million gap, but still funded a COLA basically for schools, the inflation increase to the UPSFF. So it can be done, but I think right now is the time. Your petition period is probably finished with your LSAT, I would guess. But, advocating to the mayor, like every student sending an email to the mayor, to a budget director, to the deputy mayor for education, to say, we need to fund our schools, number one, in this budget that comes down. And then we'll see what comes from that. That's the number one request I've made. Then number two is going to the council and take the day off from school, just full school, go down there for Mendelson's hearing and say, council, we got to put this number one. And just because these cuts in my ward are between 5% and 24%. Walls isn't in mine, it's in Representative Chang's, but they're devastating. Like, we haven't seen something like this to education. And a lot of it's the fault of the chancellor, to be honest. Not negotiating with unions in good faith in a timely manner. There's 6 years of pay raises they're trying to cram into it. And I'm glad I'll volunteer to do it if you want me to. I'll come in and kind of lay out with the student advisory committee, if you want, a brief presentation on the budget, kind of showing how the per student costs are calculated, or the per teacher costs are calculated, principal costs, how that goes into the initial budget, and then walk you through the whole process. But, and including kind of pass for advocacy, because there's a lot of room for advocacy on this. And I think the only way we get this back is if people come out and force for it and put it number one.
Yeah, I would really love if you sent that, maybe to the student advisory committee, but also to me and other students who are interested, so that we can spread it to our schools, so that kids, just not in the SEC, just kids can advocate.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing, and I'm so appreciative because Representative Goulet, we know you have 20-something years plus.
You're dating,
budget.
man, you're dating.
I know, because I remember when I met you, you were just fresh out of college and you were working for a council member when you first came on. So I appreciate that. So what I'm hearing, and I appreciate that, Representative Duncan, that you're gonna help them with that, but also help with the SAC.
Yeah.
And so that they'll have that knowledge to be able to advocate for their schools, because I'm sure that everybody is feeling this pinch, because I think people got this illusion that we got this big increase with the 12.4. But in actuality, everybody's feeling a big pinch. And so I think it would be incumbent, since, as you said, the LSATs have passed their petition aspect. I didn't know that, so thank you. That, you know, you can help.
I think they have. They may be in a couple days,
so.
but I think it's done now.
I'm
Representative.
just gonna add the budget hearing sign up is open, so.
Yeah.
I can send you the link to that.
Yeah, that would be great, thank you.
All right, so it looks like we have a process. We're gonna make sure that Representative Yarkin has the support and SAC as polls have the support that they need. And no, I'll just give you this opportunity, not, you know, being proactive. Yes,
Is everyone done with that? I have something
okay,
I want to raise.
all right. One other new business.
One other new business, excuse me. Layla McLaughlin, it's her last 2 weeks with us. And I just want to thank her for everything. She is She is our first administrative and operations fellow, and she knocked it out of the park.
Yes, she did.
She has helped us interview and find a new admin and operations fellow that will be starting in March, but she set the bar for this position. I want to thank her. She has done so much.
I would just echo that 10 times over. There would be no SOPs or bylaws for the board without Layla. Because Colleen was like, y'all don't get this done in time. I was like, we got Layla. Sure, we'll get it done. And sure enough, they got done. And so, Layla, your work has just been absolutely tremendous. And we're so excited. I want you all to know she got accepted to all of her grad school choices and even got some free ride money. So we're super excited for her next steps. But she has been a great and awesome team member to the state board staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Fleischer, for recognizing her, because of course, we all benefited from her being here. I know she's looking down, she's a little embarrassed at this moment, but you deserve those flowers. So thank you so much for that. Was there any other new business? One last time, go around. Any new business? Not seeing any. I'm gonna move to adjournment, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded properly. So with that, all in favor? Aye. Okay, I guess I get to read this last statement before we turn everything off. Thank you, members, for your time and engagement tonight. As a reminder to our viewing public, the State Board of Education will continue to hold in-person meetings. The next public meeting will be held on Wednesday, March 20th in the old council chambers at 441, which is Marion S. Berry Jr. Building Northwest. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.